In addition to those 26 biblical qualifications that were given in the previous threshold, there are 4 things that I believe are necessary for a church planter to possess. These aren't biblical qualifications. They don't kind of carry that weight, but they are important. And the first one is evangelistic fervor. If you're not a person who has evangelistic fervor, passion for evangelism, then you're going to struggle as a church planter, because so much of the work of church planting is about winning the lost to Christ. So you have to have a capacity or a heart, a special heart for that yourself. Evangelistic fervor. The second one is initiative. You have to have the sort of initiative that would cause you to be a self-starter. In a large church, you can imagine, or even a modestly sized church, you can imagine a pastor sort of sitting in his office all day and dealing with his inbox. As people come and ask questions, he responds in a godly way to those things. Well, a church planter doesn't have that luxury. If he sits in his office all day, he'll just sit there alone. You have to start something. You have to get things going. You have to go recruit new leaders. Now, every pastor should do that, but in a very specific way, a church planter simply will not be successful if he doesn't have that sort of initiative required to get something new started. Tenacity is the third characteristic that I think it's important for any church planter to possess. You have to have that sort of thick-skinnedness that is required to hear some difficult circumstance come against you, and you're willing to fight through that and to get over it. One of the illustrations I always use in this is there are some people that I know, most people that I know, that they walk along in life until they get to a wall, and when they get to a wall, they start screaming to everyone around them, "Hey, I don't know what to do here. I can't go any further. I've hit this wall." And some people just simply sit down and make camp right there. A church planter has the sort of tenacity that he's gonna get by that wall. He's gonna drill through it. He's gonna walk around it. He's gonna climb over it, but somehow he's gonna overcome that obstacle. And that sort of stubbornness, tenacity, ingenuity is required for a church planter. None of these fields that you're going to go to and start a new church in are going to want you there. None of them are going to say, "Oh, we're so glad that you're here to start a new church." Every one of these church planting ventures is going to be an uphill battle, not just out of sort of regular difficulties of church starting, but also because we live in an increasingly secular society that has no interest. We have the spiritual warfare pressing in on us. We have financial pressures and familial pressures. All of that combined with the fact that we are trying to push back Satan and to push back darkness to bring the light of the gospel into a community that Satan has a stronghold on. And lastly, a church planter should have vision. Your church doesn't exist. You can't say, "Hey, you should come to my church because we have a great children's ministry, because we have great preaching, because we have great music, because we have," you fill in the blank. You can't do that. What you have to compel people, your equity, your currency as a church planter is vision. You're going to say, "Hey, I want you to consider being a part of my church planting team and coming with my new church because..." What are you going to say? What are you going to say? It's not because you have anything you're going to have to say. It's because we're going to do something great in our community. It's because we're going to reach the lost with the gospel. It's because we're going to push back lostness in our community. There's going to be something compelling that you're going to be able to give as a piece of vision to somebody. And how well you do that will determine how good you are at gathering people to you. So I think it's important for you to take these characteristics and ask yourself, just like you did in the previous threshold, do I have these qualities? And if you don't have these qualities, to work to develop those qualities or those competencies so that you can do the job of church planting really well. It's also important to get people around you to evaluate your own gifting and help you determine if you possess those qualities. So you might be hearing this and saying, "You know what, I definitely don't possess one or two of those things." Well, if you don't possess those things, it might be okay. Here's how you determine if it's okay. Who do you have on your team? Now, at times, you can overcome shortcomings in your own competencies and your own giftings by surrounding yourself with people who have those competencies in spades, that are really good at those things. Now, you can't do that on the biblical qualifications. Obviously, if you don't have good character, you can't sub somebody in that has good character. But on these competencies, on these 4 things that I mentioned to you in this threshold, I do think it's possible to surround yourself with others who possess those skills. And as long as you're willing to work in deference to them and support them and mutually submit to one another out of reverence for Christ, you can accomplish the work together.